Today, our webinar is being presented by Phil Smith, VP of Solutions Consulting with Link Media 360. Phil, I know you have a lot of interesting and important insights to share as we're going straight into 2019 for senior living marketers. So Phil, please take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. And thank you everybody for attending the webinar. I'm really excited to share our marketing intelligence here for 2019. So what we want to do is really first just cover some of the industry dynamics, Jeff, some of the trends that we're seeing. We want to overcome some of or talk through some of the challenges that we had to overcome in 2018. So finding those high quality leads, creating operating insights from overcoming our reporting challenges to winning in this competitive market, and then really get into the tactics that are going to help us win in 2019. So,
right, and the great part about this webinar is we had quantifiable evidence on the biggest challenges in 2018, and we're going to talk about our experiences that we had in supporting communities to overcome them, and then jump straight into how we win 2019. So this should be an amazing webinar, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, to really follow up on that guide that we were able to publish, and I think some of you guys have downloaded that and shared some of your insights. So it's been great to really get that quantifiable evidence, not only shared, but receive some of this feedback for 2019. Just a quick recap of Link Media 360. We're experts in the senior living space. We've been doing this for over a decade now. We're really focused in senior living, in occupancy, and really driving results for our clients. And we do have, a full-time, staff here, over 60 people. So it's been great to grow in this space.
Let's jump into dynamics and trends.
Thanks. And so, one of the things that we really want to talk through today, and I'm sure that all of you here watching are aware that there are some trends in the space when it comes to occupancy, and really our occupancy in both independent living and assisted living are seeing some downward trends. And one of the biggest things is they're facing pressure from really oversupply in the space. What we're seeing is that there's large money flowing into the space. They're realizing that a lot of the real estate and some of these larger DMAs are a bit seasoned, we'll say. Vintage, maybe 17 years or older, right? So in our largest DMAs, we're seeing really inventory growth that is outpacing the absorption, and the average rate, what we'll call the rental rate, is declining in almost every single market. So we know that there's a lot of supply coming online, but we also know that that the boomers are coming, right? So one of the things that is really important is that our target audience doesn't really show up for the next 4 or 5 years, right? That 75 to 82-year-old is who we're really looking to capture for a lot of our independent living. And ultimately, there's not a big shift there until 2022. But when we really look at who makes up a lot of our communities today, I'm sure you're saying, well, Phil, that would be great to find a 75-year-old to move in, but unfortunately, we're somewhere around that average age of, in the 80s, early 80s, maybe even 83, 84. And we see that, that large, kind of shift there in that age bracket or age cohort of 83 to 87 doesn't really happen until 2026 or maybe even 2030. So while the boomers are coming, we are seeing that the growth of who we serve is still a couple of years down the road.
Wow, so it sounds like we have a lot of capacity coming online. So it speaks to an intense battle or an intense competitive battle across the communities and local markets to really take advantage of those that are available until we lean into this future forecast of increasing supply side coming available.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the other things, Jeff, is that, and everybody else here on the webinar, is that they also found that there really is no correlation between, a growth in supply and then the actual absorption or adoption in that space. So just because we're building in these markets doesn't mean that seniors today are moving in any faster than what they were before. So I think that there's obvious headwinds in the short term here, maybe even in the midterm. But I think in the long term, we are going to see, some of these things even out. But ultimately, we've got to win in today's market so we can be around for tomorrow's.
Right. So that speaks to the need for increased education on why people should consider moving in earlier than they think. Or does that sound accurate?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the big challenges in finding high quality leads is just the education piece, and getting people to be more open to the options and just understand. So I think that's one of the challenges. We all see AARP ads even now. You don't know ARP, right? So they're trying that same tactic, and that's one of the big proponents out there is AARP for the seniors housing market. Let's talk about some of the challenges that we overcame in 2018. That first one was high quality leads, right? And of course, even if we're full, even if we have a waiting list, we're still interested in finding high quality leads. And one of the first things we have to do is we already understand that a lot of our residents are coming from a very specific radius, typically somewhere around 30 miles from our community. So we've got a very local audience, a very local pool. Doesn't mean that we don't pull from national places, but we know that that's where we've got to be visible and present first and foremost. And so just to recap very quickly, Jeff, on this slide, you'll see the ranking factors and how to show up in this map pack, which is very, very important when people are searching non-branded key terms like independent living. And knowing that this really looking at the customer journey or the resident journey, we know that they're searching over 10 sources of information. Those include, possibly residents at the community or their friends in the larger community. Also looking online, looking at reviews. So we know that seniors, their families, their caregivers, the ACIs, they are using Google. They are using search engines to get more information about making this next move.
So Phil, do you think we made progress on this term non-branded? And I think that's such an important term to emphasize, the fact that seniors, research their condition versus a brand name. And how have you seen progress being made on communities recognizing that they really have to dominate non-branded search compared to just literally trying to compete on their brand name?
No, I think that's great. I think there's probably a lot of questions out there about non-brand versus brand. How active should we be? And I think we are seeing a shift. We are seeing communities understand that 90% of the time, when seniors first go to a search engine, they are searching for treatment, therapy, and condition-related key terms, with only 10% of the time being, branded searches. So that would be, even if they drive past the memory care center every single day on their way to work, and mom now has a memory care need, it doesn't mean that they're going to immediately Google that memory care community that they drive by. They're going to start searching for, what to expect as a caregiver. How long can they stay in the home? They're really going to try to educate themselves before they latch on to a specific brand. And we are seeing a shift, but, still, the brand is still important. It's just, important locally, boots on the ground, and still a little bit in search, but that non-brand is still dominating. And so beyond just non-branded though, what we're looking at is just general searches, right? And how Google is ranking or using factors to rank on this search engine results page. There are other factors for the organic listings. So the buckets stay the same, but the weights change. And we know that Google is getting more and more focused on technical. We don't have time to go into the importance, but if you take a look at this, keywords or on-page signals are actually the second most important ranking factor to Google. So there are things that are actually even more important than just non-branded versus branded keywords. So it's important that, again, we try to get as relevant as we can to really be visible when and where our personas, our seniors and their families are searching. The last point to make here on organic is just that this typically is going to be your highest quality, lowest cost per acquisition, right? This is where you're going to see most of the high consideration sales processes take place through organic search. So again, paid advertising is a little bit more expensive. We know TV, radio, out of home. If we can connect the data points to a cost per acquisition, typically it is higher. So again, investing in SEO impacts the long-term sustainability of our brand, but also drives us, a high quality lead. The second challenge we had to overcome is really figuring out our reporting, just data integrity in general, and then translating those reports into things that actually matter, right? So I think everybody on the webinar today can say that their CEO probably isn't focused on website bounce rates, right? So we have to figure out other key performance indicators that are most important to your team, that are going to tell the story of how you're performing, right? So one of the great ways to really connect those data points besides data integrity audits is using a visualized data set. So you can see things like trends. You can see month over month changes. If you have a customized dashboard like the one in front of you, you can even change date ranges to look at month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year. But ultimately, you need the technologies in place to make this happen. So if we're not investing in first in our website and the analytics portion, that makes this really tough. But we also need a CRM. We need call tracking. We also could really use email marketing automation as well. So just making sure that we have the tools and the technologies in place is going to be really, really important in this, really unlocking the power of your data, because it is powerful. We just, need the technologies and the know-how to get through it. The third thing is we've already talked. We know everybody here again today knows that the market is more competitive. There are brand new builds coming online. There are expansions out there. And, we've ultimately got to come up with some sort of framework for success in today's market. So what I want to do is just share quickly where we should be investing and where we found success for our senior living communities in this competitive market. The first is your website and its technology. I think we just talked about that. Making sure that we're testing that website over time, right? We invest a lot in our physical assets. We pay somebody to cut the grass, to do the lawn care, the landscaping, right? But for some reason, when we invest in a website, we just think we should redesign every 2 years and not touch it in between. That's really not how it should work. Every single month, you can be doing testing and revisions and continue to iterate that website over time to increase conversions, which I think is ultimately what we're trying to do. The next is, search experience. Again, we know that there's a high search demand in all markets for services, treatments, and, really senior housing in general. So being visible at the top of the page through SEO and PPC is going to be important to getting visible in your local communities. Supporting that visibility is going to be investing in content. Content does so many things for us. I'm sure, and again, I know that it's tough. I talk with a lot of communities. Some of the things that I hear is we just, can't spend the time to produce high quality content. So, I always say start with one a month, and, really what this does, it's going to help you be more of a thought leader, right? So if you can get some input from your OT or your PTs, anybody who's a subject matter expert would be great. It helps us rank better in search engines. It helps us when we follow up to really nurture our prospects and our leads along and educate them. So many good things come from content. We need to make sure that we're, investing there, local and offsite. Again, while on page is important, off page or possibly looking at links and local citations can be just as important. So making sure that we're really building our presence in that local 3-pack and the map pack, and really building authority, not just with, our local communities, but also with Google. And the last piece, or I should say the last channel, would be email automation, making sure that as these leads start to come in from all of our other channels and our efforts with CRO, that we've got some sort of technology that's keeping people warm, keeping our brand top of mind, right? We know how hard we had to work to get them aware of us. So how do we keep them engaged through that process? And I'll say the last thing that we need to really be seriously investing in is data science and analytics, right? This is going to underscore everything that you do. This is going to connect the lead from PPC or your paid advertising campaign to somebody that moves in 8 months after 40 phone calls and 2 on-site tours, right? So if we're going to connect all those dots together, we've really got to invest here. So hopefully we can drive rankings, drive more traffic to our website, higher quality inquiries at a faster rate, generate more tours, and ultimately more movement.
So embracing this framework, this approach, end to end, you feel like we've made progress in 2018. There's still a lot of work to do, but there definitely has been, you've seen success stories and have case studies of communities that have really embraced this full stop and made an impact to their occupancy rate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, occupancy rate is something we're trying to impact, and it's such a true partnership, right? Because once we generate the leads, we've got to make sure that their process is solid to follow up and stay up with these guys. And we've got a great case story where, over the course of 2 years, we really took a community from 10 individual websites into one consolidated website, investing in all of these strategies, increasing leads over 200%, increasing engagement on the website and conversions. But ultimately, the impact that we were able to drive through our partnership was stabilized occupancy rates above 90% for IL, AL in successive quarters for the first time, multiple successive quarters for the first time in their history. So not only are we able to increase occupancy, but keep the swings from being so much when we start to look at all of these channels being turned on, many different lead sources, a lot of tracking. So again, if we can get to this point in the digital marketing maturity curve where we can invest in a lot of different channels and do it effectively, there's just such great results to be had. And I think we're seeing some really great trends with a lot of communities figuring out how to do this internally and externally. One of the other things, and this is my favorite, I think everybody in the working world can relate to this: too much work, too little time, right? And there's definitely, again, this leaky funnel phenomenon, right? We know through some partners that up to 30% of the calls that communities are receiving are mishandled. So either they're not being passed to the right person, they're not being answered, they're not being followed up on, right? That's 30%. I mean, that's such a ginormous piece of the puzzle for us. And it really starts with, some of our early on process and early on technologies. So what we've seen is when communities are able to implement things like call tracking, they can start to see the real number of leads that they are receiving and then start to make some operational adjustments inside of their sales process. So while it is just, what we'll call marketing data, it really does help to close that loop and inform what operations is doing. And I'll say that we have seen a lot of success for communities that have taken this on. And a lot of communities are already doing call tracking, so that's great. But we are seeing some success when you start to blend these technologies together and really keep track of our personas through each one of their steps. It's a long cycle, right? We know IL can be 8 to 9 months or even 2 years. And even assisted living is 2 to 3 months with the possibility to be longer. So to keep people engaged, to stay up with them, is monumentally important in this highly competitive space that we're operating. So those were our, really the challenges that we were trying to and really successfully overcame in a lot of instances. Not that those challenges disappear, right, in 2018. Just because the ball drops doesn't mean it all resets. I think we're still going to face those same challenges. And a lot of communities are going to be at different points. A lot of you guys on this call today are probably at different points in your operating and marketing maturity. And I think, what's really important is these 5 tactics that we know are going to really help us win in 2019. That first one is really making your website the center of your communication strategy. We know that whether they find you on a billboard, TV, radio, they hear from a friend, they read a Google review, they're ultimately going to self-educate on your website. And your website is the only asset. While we love our salespeople, this is the only asset that we have full control over as far as the messaging, right? We clearly can control exactly what this, is going to communicate to each one of our personas. And this is always on 24/7, 365, right? So we want to make sure that this is locked tight. It's matching our personas we've got a good search strategy, and that everything then points back. So Jeff, one of the things that we're seeing is we had a community that was opening up basically an expansion or a conversion, and they invited those that were qualified via direct mail to do a hard hat tour, to come on site and see what it looked like while it was in construction. But what they did was they provided a URL and a call tracking number on that direct mail piece. So if somebody called and scheduled, they knew where it came from, but they could also go somewhere on the website. And on the website, there was a house, we'll call it a house. There was a landing page that spoke all about the event, when it was happening, where it was happening, and it provided some RSVP online functionality. So not only could they call in, but they could find a place physically on the website. And the only place that you could get to that web page from was by seeing the direct mail piece, because we kept it off of Google and we kept it off of the rest of the website. We only wanted these people in our local area. Well, then, there's some other strategies that we did from a paid advertising and retargeting, but just ultimately, it was one of their most successful events that they had had. They had tracked it well, and they had, actually gotten to full capacity before it was complete, before it was actually open to the public. And so, again, filling 20 memory care units before they're open, is that important to you? Probably not until you're trying to open one. Right. But there are some really great things that we can do that really is going to use your website as the communications vehicle.
Wow. And so not only measuring the precise impact of an event such as that, but then even with the website as the center of your communication strategy, testing and evolving the messaging into seeing what resonates, and even doing a degree of trialing and implementation to see what sticks and what resonates. And the moment you slightly change the content and that thereby increases a lift in the performance, that's what you win. And then you print it, as they say, right?
Yep, exactly. Number two, though, is once we have the communication, it's all pointing back to our website, we need to scale it, right? And the way to do that is through technology and automation. So what we want to do is we want to connect things, like I just mentioned, connect your direct mail pieces to your website, but also connect that messaging and all that testing that you're doing to your emails. Really, again, align your CTAs, your calls to action, to where those are, where your personas are in their journey. So if they're in the I'm ready to schedule a tour phase, then we need to be hitting them with that message. But at some point, they go into education mode for months, right? We just talked that the sales cycle could be 8 to 9 months, maybe 2 years, but there's a time in there where they're trying to educate themselves. At some point, we want to switch the messaging from asking Mary, the active senior who's looking for independent living for herself. At some point, we want to stop asking Mary to schedule a tour, and we want to educate Mary on what it's going to be like to downsize, what her first month is going to be like at the community, what type of events she can expect, or what kind of volunteer opportunities we provide, right? And then we want to switch back to asking for the tour. And all while this is happening, right? This could be 8 months worth of emails. Maybe she got 20 or 30 different messages from us. She was also getting phone calls that were being made manually, but it didn't take that salesperson, the 100 leads we got this month, they didn't have to manually send out 100 different emails. We allow them to call back those that are ready, and we allow our technologies to do things like lead scoring to help us, better prioritize those who might be more apt to reach out and schedule a tour. The third thing is publish, right? We need to publish. We know content. Again, content is king. It supports SEO, thought leadership. It does so many things for us. It also prepares us for the future, right? If you ever wonder when you ask, say, a smartphone or Alexa a question and it reads back an answer, it's because it's coming into this area. It's reading this text right here, which is called the position 0 or the answer panel or answer box ranking, right? So as the future of search changes more to voice and smart speaker, and there's less screens involved, content can help prepare your brand to be on the cutting edge. But also, again, as I mentioned, it can drive traffic. In this example here, in just over 14 months, we really took a blog from about 1,000 unique visitors a month to just below 9,000. And ultimately, again, imagine if the very first, brand interaction that a senior has or an adult child has is learning about occupational therapy for seniors from your brand. You immediately become the authority, especially if you talk about how you're a little bit different or how your ideologies work a little bit better. You're going to be able to educate them not just on occupational therapy and how it's going to impact their loved one, but also how you can do it a little bit better. So it gives us the opportunity to be that thought leader, be that trusted resource while they're doing all this research, but also share a little bit about ourselves and be a little bit unique and really draw in personas from all areas.
So it sounds like that strategy of educate to dominate really will continue to maintain importance in 2019. So the more we strive to educate our prospects and customers, the more trust we earn, and thereby potentially driving that occupancy rate.
Yep, absolutely. That's one of those things that seniors and ACIs and family members are looking for, right? Is I trust that you've done this before. I trust that you can help, right? I'm in a position where I'm unfamiliar most of the times, and I'm looking for that advisor. So this gives us that platform. One of the other things is, as far as winning in 2019, there's some quick wins we can get with paid media. So paid media is one of those areas where we know that Google is a business, right? And Google is looking for advertising revenue. So they are monetizing the search engine results page, which means that they're actively rewarding those who are willing to advertise. One of the things that they reward us with is keyword level data. So if we're investing in paid search, not only are we at the top of the search engine results page and actively driving leads, right, and hopefully managing that on a cost per lead, cost per acquisition basis that fits our operating model, but we're also getting really unique insights about the keywords in which people are searching and finding us. And what we can do is we can look at the keywords that are converting the best, right, so maybe the lowest or closest to the bottom of the funnel, and then start to organically optimize some of our web pages for them. So if we know somebody's searching for what is occupational therapy, is more at the top of the funnel because they're clicking through to our content and leaving and not converting, but somebody that searches occupational therapy near me is more likely to convert. How can we maybe better optimize our website, not only to get the people that are at the beginning of the journey so they can become brand aware, but also get the people at the end of the journey that are ready to make a decision. So there's some really great wins. Retargeting is another one of those, but again, just a little snippet there. Keyword data is really important, and competitive insights from paid are amazing. So definitely investing in paid is something I think we'll see more of here in 2019. The last is commanding your data. If you're able to command your data and really do this at a high level, you will have a unique competitive advantage, right? And so just to give you an idea of one of the ways that we're helping our clients understand, quantify, categorize, and then analyze their own data sets is through what we call the data science model for senior living. So there are 4 big events, and I'll go through this very quickly. If you have questions, as always, feel free to reach out. But there are 4 big events that happen in kind of the resident journey as it relates to marketing or operations. There's the initial inquiry. There's then the campus tour, there's a move in and a move out. And what we're trying to do is ultimately trying to find the best predictors that are going to influence the outcomes we're hoping to achieve. So Phil, what does that mean in normal people language? It means that what I want to do is I want to find the channel that creates the highest quality lead that's the most move-in ready, so that the time frame from inquiry to move-in is shorter than 8 to 9 months, so we can impact occupancy in a quicker time. Right? And so what's really amazing about this is you can not only look at the different sources, so TV, newsletters, billboards, your website, advertising, etc., but you can also look at who reached out and what service line are they reaching out in. As we've already mentioned, an AL sales cycle is very different for our sales counselors than an independent living sales cycle on average. So how does that start to impact and influence what we are doing from a marketing and sales perspective? And just one example of that is if somebody fills out a form, gives you a call, just generally inquires from any source, right? And then actually has a campus tour. They come take an on-site visit within 30 days. They're 66% more likely to end up as a resident move-in, right? So there's this time frame between here that's really important to influencing the outcome that we're trying to have happen, which is a resident move-in. The biggest piece is, well, how can we take advantage of that knowledge? Well, I mentioned previously, match your calls to action to where they may be in their sales process. So if you're seeing that somebody reaching out for themselves is typically more likely to have campus.
So we just had an audio difficulty with Phil's signal, but I can conclude this webinar for Phil to the point that the Q&A board was really lighting up during Phil's last segment as far as commanding your data. And we were essentially finished with the webinar. We're going to go into the Q&A and answer some of the most popular questions here that surfaced via votes. But I think what's most important is to understand that all of these aspects of what worked in 2018 and what challenges are still yet to overcome, and then how to roll into 2019 with a strong and effective strategy. These are all things that are currently happening, and these are best practices that are called from dozens, if not hundreds of communities across the United States. So we will conclude this webinar today, but if you do have very specific questions around anything you saw here in this webinar, please contact Phil Smith and email him at psmith@linkmedia360.com. So we really appreciate your time and attention today, 2019 Marketing Intelligence for Senior Living Marketers. And as your host, Jeff Herman, I thank you for your time and attention. And once again, please do contact Phil Smith for very specific details on how to leverage some of the concepts and strategies discussed here today. Thank you.